Hello, this is Sara Habibi here.
And Paula Monty here too.
We'd both like to welcome you to the Jumpstarting process for handwriting and copying from the board. Now, if you're doing this course, it probably means that you and your child have experienced success with the Jumpstarting process for spelling and maybe the reading process too. If so, we'd love to hear about your experiences, so do leave a testimonial at the end of this course, or you can always get in touch with us via email.
But as usual, before we begin, we just need to make sure that before starting this section, you haven't somehow managed to skip the Jumpstarting process for spelling, the modules 1 and 2. You see, for the handwriting process to work, you and your child, if he or she is old enough, you really need to understand the background to our approach. Your child definitely needs to know how to get their mental imagery under control through grounding, which is all in Module 1, and also how to learn to spell new words, which is in Module 2, the Jumpstarting process for spelling.
So the course is in 4 parts, and here is an overview of what we'll be covering. So part 1 will be the basics of handwriting and the experience of handwriting. This actually gives you some typical problems, some practical tips for getting started, and also we talk about the arguments about, typing on a computer versus handwriting, and also cursive versus print in terms of writing styles. In part 2, we then go through the actual handwriting process step by step with you. And part 3, and this won't apply to everybody, but if your child is having a particular difficulty with letter formation, we're going to go through how to tackle that as well. And then part 4, a real bit of magic, is how to help your child copy from the board really effectively and easily. So, as usual, before we do anything, let's get grounded. Take a nice big deep breath in and out. Have your feet flat on the ground. Just imagine you have roots from the soles of your feet going deep down into the earth, and as you breathe out, you release all your stress, and as you breathe in, you just breathe in positive and powerful emotions, and then we're ready to begin.
So, ready to begin part 1, an introduction to handwriting. And the first question we're going to think about is, well, why bother with handwriting? We often hear people questioning the point of learning to write well by hand nowadays because, well, everyone in future is surely going to be using technology to communicate. Won't handwriting become a thing of the past? In particular, well, what's the point of someone with dyslexia and or dysgraphia, problems with handwriting, struggling, when they can have access to assistive technology, and this is usually the keyboard and special software? Well, let's have a look at those ideas in more detail. Certainly, when someone is assessed as having dyslexia and or dysgraphia, there's usually a recommendation that part of the support a school should provide is access to assistive technology, and this can indeed be a real help. Using a keyboard, once they've learned to touch type properly, can take some of the pressure off writing tasks. And voice recognition software can go further in helping to make writing tasks much easier for someone with dyslexia. And when used in this way as an aid, it can be extremely useful. However, there are still strong arguments for children, including those who are struggling with spelling and handwriting, to learn to write by hand, especially in the early stages. Well, the first reason is that evidence from neuroscience suggests that we use different parts of the brain in different ways when we're handwriting rather than typing. And indeed we need these different brain functions to be developed to help our ability to think and reason as we grow up. Secondly, forming letters and words physically by hand actually improves our ability to remember them and to be able to recognize them later. You see, visual memory and muscle memory work together to help each other be more effective. And as we know, we really need our visual memory in order to read and spell. Thirdly, we don't see it as an either-or argument. Both typing and handwriting are essential skills for modern life. And finally, one really important point is that being able to spell, it's still essential regardless of which method you're using to write.
Okay, so if you are doing this course, then you're probably concerned about your child's handwriting, as it is still the main way in which children are doing their schoolwork. So let's have a look at some common issues that parents talk to us about with regards to their child's handwriting. So does your child refuse to write at all, or will write literally as little as possible? So if they're asked to write a sentence, it's 3 or 4 words maximum. If they're asked to write a page, they'll only write a few lines. They always say, no, I've done what I've been asked to do, and end of story. And it's a real battle to get them to expand on what they're saying or to go into more detail in terms of their answers. This is one of the most common problems, is the reversal of letters and numbers. And yes, many students do this at the start when they're learning and are often told, oh, they'll grow out of it. However, if they are still reversing by the age of 7 or 8, then this really must be addressed immediately. At that stage, that should have been stopped. Are they mixing lower and uppercase letters and words? Uppercase letters are in the wrong place or mid-word. Sometimes they may only use uppercase letters, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about why that is later. You'll often see lots of crossing out of words. Letters are too big, or they're tiny, they're absolutely miniature, you can hardly see them. Perhaps the words don't sit properly on the line. They're slanted, they're all over the place. And what you'll often see is that the gaps between words is too small, so it's very hard to differentiate between words. You'll see that their writing is very slow and with no flow. And often you'll also see them pressing very hard onto the paper. There's a huge amount of effort and energy that goes into actually writing itself. And of course, with any of those, you'll always see children get very tired and stressed when writing. And obviously having any of the above issues means that your child will be finding the writing tasks at school and for homework a bit of a challenge, which in turn can mean additional stress at home. So, as with all jump-starting processes, we don't focus merely on the external behaviour. We really need to know what's happening inside the child, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So helping your child to explore and understand their inner experiences is essential to be able to help them to make the necessary changes to move forward. So you want to be thinking about asking your children some of these questions. How do they actually feel about their handwriting? Are they embarrassed? Are they worried about it? Or, some children might look as if they don't care. Maybe they do inside, but they might say, oh no, it doesn't matter, it doesn't bother me. And they have very little motivation in terms of actually changing it. What do they emotionally and physically feel when they're writing? Do they have any pain or tension or tiredness, etc.? Are they concerned about their handwriting, in that this is something that they want to work hard at in order to improve? And this is, again, quite a common thing that we find, which is that bad handwriting has actually been used to disguise poor spelling. Often dyslexia and poor handwriting go hand in hand.
So let's look at some practical changes that you can make before we start the handwriting process itself. And these practical changes can often make a big difference. Or you may have tried some of these out already, but they're always worth going over again and checking. So, we're thinking about, firstly, the position of the paper, the book, and the hand that's writing. Generally, the paper or book should be at a 45 angle to the body and parallel to the arm. So you can see the picture there. That's for a right-handed person. And if your child is left-handed, it's the mirror image. Now, it's really important for left-handed people to have the paper at the correct angle and to have their hand below the line that they're writing on, so that they can see what they're writing as they go. Now, if you're not left-handed, but you have a left-handed child, it's really worth trying this out for yourself. It's actually quite an eye-opener as to the difference writing at the right angle can make. And if you're left-handed yourself, but we're not taught this technique, then it's never too late. Actually, Sara and I have been having great fun writing with our left hands, we're both right-handed, to test it out. And it was quite remarkable, if you change the angle of the paper, what a big difference it makes to the quality of your handwriting. We were actually quite amazed at that. The next thing that people often talk about is the pencil grip. You do see children using all kinds of different pencil grips, even the whole fist one, where they're writing practically with their whole arm. Actually, there's no evidence that one is better than the other. So we recommend that as long as your child feels comfortable and after they've done the handwriting process with us, the handwriting is neat and it's flowing, there's no need to change it. But, obviously the conventional way, over time has developed to be the most effective. And you can experiment with pencil grips to see if they can find a better way to hold the pencil, particularly if they're feeling tension and strain in their handwriting hand. Now, another consideration to take into account is the sitting position. You need plenty of working space around you, don't you? This is especially important in class for left-handed children. There might not be enough space for them to have their book at the right angle, particularly if they're sitting next to somebody who's right-handed. It can be quite a squash with, lots of children sitting at the table. So do have a word with your child's teacher about this if that seems to be a problem for your child. Another question is which type of pen to use. Ink, ballpoint, felt tips, pencil. One of the problems that we see is pressing too hard, and that really slows down the speed that you can write at. So check that the pen that your child is using can glide easily, so they actually don't need to press hard to make the mark. Again, this is especially important for left-handers. Otherwise, the ink can smudge and also make it harder to write. Now, writing slopes, that's a sort of sloping, can be perspex or can be made of wood, that makes the book stand up on the desk. These are recommended by many occupational therapists, and they really can be very, very useful in class. So please ask your school, ask your child's teacher if it is possible for them to have a writing slope, if you find that really helps them. And then make sure they get to keep them as long as they need it. But the ultimate aim really is that they can manage without that.
So we now come on to the question of which handwriting style is best. I'm thinking in particular about children with dyslexia and dysgraphia. And there are many powerful arguments for both cursive, joined up writing styles, and printing. In fact, the International Dyslexia Association and many specialist schools do recommend a cursive style, and it's for these reasons. One is that letter formation is actually easier, as most of the letters in the alphabet do start at the same place, as in on the line. When you're writing in cursive writing, the words are clearly separated from each other. It can strengthen fine motor skills because you have a smooth rather than a choppy movement, which can make the writing flow better. And letter reversals can actually be less frequent with cursive writing because, well, number one, the letters are more distinct, so it's easier to recognise which one to use, but also the letters are sort of anchored together, so each letter inside the word is connected to the next one and it's kind of stuck in place as they write. Now, the arguments for print is that print is already much more widely used, it matches what people are reading in books and on computers, and if you're using a movable alphabet, as in tiles or flashcards, then in early stages it's easier obviously if it's printed. You can't really do that with cursive. And often what you will find is actually a combination, what's called a semi-cursive style, which basically gives you the best of both. And it's also easier if you can do the semi-cursive style to move to fully print or fully cursive. It's necessary. We don't have a particular view on which is better. As you will see later, our process can work with any style. Now, it's likely that your child's school will have adopted a particular writing style and scheme. These are often linked to their spelling schemes, so this is the style your child will aim to learn, if possible.
Well, Olive Hickmott, who's the originator of all our wonderful jump-starting processes, actually made an amazing discovery as she was doing her research. It appears that most handwriting difficulties actually stem from not having a clear and stable picture of the word in the mind's eye. And we found ourselves that with most students, when their spelling is improved using the jump-starting process for spelling, the handwriting often improves automatically. We see parents looking quite amazed when suddenly not only can their child spell, but their handwriting seems to have improved, well, seemingly by magic. I wonder, perhaps you might have already discovered that yourself. So the next step we're going to take is the handwriting process. So we'll see you in the next part.